Good morning. The markets are moving and so are you from the Biz News studios. This is Biz News Daybreak for Thursday, the 22nd of January 2026. I'm Alec Hogg. Here's the context you need to win the day. A bumper edition for you today. Not surprisingly, the World Economic Forum is on the go. Donald Trump is, grabbing the stage there, and we'll have quite a bit on it. But it appears as though the taco trade is back on. Greenland was, there was an off-ramp that Trump found quite elegantly. U.S. share prices celebrated. Here's our partners at Bloomberg.
President Trump will refrain from imposing tariffs on goods from those European nations opposed to his efforts to take possession of Greenland. Today, in a post on Truth Social, Trump cited the framework of a future deal reached with NATO. Now, the post followed a meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Afterwards, Trump spoke with reporters.
It's a long-term deal. It's the ultimate long-term deal. I think it puts everybody in a really good position, especially as it pertains to security and minerals.
Now, the New York Times is reporting the discussions on a framework included a compromise in which Denmark would give the U.S. sovereignty over small pockets of the territory's land for construction of military bases. Now, Trump's remarks on Greenland sparked a rally in stocks, bonds, and the dollar. Small cap shares outperformed, with the Russell 2000 jumping 2%. The S&P 500 picked up nearly 1.2%, wiping out its drop for all of this year. And we got reaction from Allison McCartney. She is Managing Director for Wealth Management at UBS Financial Services.
There seems to be, or markets are telling us, that this was a lot of noise. We happen to be doing this, I think, nicely in an earnings season, which is going extremely well, and underpinning the fact that this bull market that began in late 2022, the things that are motivating it and sustaining it have not changed in the last 48 hours.
So what's going on? For context, here's Nick Wattams. He's the Washington-based leader of Bloomberg's national security team, a man who watches Trump more closely than pretty much anyone else.
It's one of those things that's a little bit shocking, but not entirely surprising. We've definitely been through this before, where the Trump administration and the president himself ratchets up pressure, says he's going to impose tariffs, and then backs down right at the last minute. The big question is going to be what this framework agreement will be, what it will entail, what will happen to Greenland, because the president was quite explicit in his comments today that he wants Greenland as U.S. territory. So what the back down is going to be there, but also then, of course, what happens in the future, because we've been in this cycle so many times where he escalates tensions, backs down, and then escalates tensions again, and it's a sort of rinse and repeat situation. So markets are certainly happy, but I don't think there's any indication, at least that I'm seeing, that we're anywhere near out of the woods, and you won't see the president just ratchet pressure up once again as a negotiating tool if this framework deal, once the details become more specific, aren't really to his liking. To me, the most likely scenario is that you would see the U.S. put more military assets in Greenland. Of course, that's something that the U.S. has been allowed to do for many decades. In fact, over the decades, the U.S. has drastically scaled back its military presence in Greenland. And Greenland and Denmark have absolutely no objection to the U.S. bolstering military assets at bases all up and down the island and putting essentially as much as they want there. What you heard from the president today as well was this mention of Golden Dome, which is his so far unproven, essentially, missile interceptor system that he wants to put in place at a cost of many, many billions of dollars. So it's possible that what happened here is that Greenland, NATO, and Denmark all sort of said, okay, we're going to be willing for you to station Golden Dome there. And that was enough to mollify him. But as usual with these things, it's not clear how much the president knows about the history of U.S. basing on Greenland, what he's allowed to do and what he's not allowed to do. So it's entirely possible, for example, that they presented to him this thing that might be seen as a big concession, but was something he could already do.
As for the man himself, President Trump enjoyed a standing ovation after delivering a charming, engaging and witty speech in Davos yesterday. While Greenland caught the spotlight, he also provided some interesting views on how the US will beat its debt and energy challenges, issues that are far more important to investors. Here's the key part of the question and answer session that followed his hour-long address.
One thing that maybe keeps you up at night, I know you don't sleep that much anyway, Mr. President, is the debt. The U.S. debt is high, is now the biggest expenditure on your budget. How to get out of that impasse?
Well, the big thing is growth. I mean, growth is the way. If we grow like this, we go from having at $37 trillion. We go from having high debt to low debt. But we also are cutting expenses, the old-fashioned way. We have extraordinary growth. I think we're going to be growing our way out. I think we're going to be paying off debt. We're taking in tremendous money from tariffs fairly. And again, I'm using them judiciously. Switzerland's a case study. I could have gotten much more. I could have asked for much more. But we're using them judiciously. But I think growth, most importantly, and then cutting costs. Now, if you take a look at Minnesota, $19 billion in fraud and other things. People going to airports, they came into the country, they don't have 10 cents, and they're leaving with hundreds of thousands of cash in their bags. When we get to that, and our DOJ, Pam, and Todd, and all the people that work over there, and all of the people that work in here, I can tell you, Scott Bessent is working on that. It's a priority, right? You have your whole team. We're in there looking for where this money is coming from, how much it is. It could be more than $19 billion. Can you believe that? That's just one state. If we were able to cut out 50% of the fraud, 50%, and we should be able to do better than that, we would have a balanced budget without having to talk about even growth.
I think, Mr. President, also the $500 billion invested in artificial intelligence and the frontier technologies last year also were driving growth exponentially in the U.S.
Well, AI has been a big factor. AI is massive. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg showed me a plant where he put it over a map of Manhattan, and it was basically the size of Manhattan. This is not... I said, you got to be kidding. It's a plant that was miles long, miles wide, very high. I don't think it was as high like the Empire State Building, but it was high. And it literally covered most of the island of Manhattan. That's called a big plant. And, when I heard they're going to spend $50 billion building it, I said, if you spend $50 million, you can build a nice little shopping center. If you spend $500 million, you can build a good shopping center. But how do you spend $50 billion? When I looked at this thing, I said, you think you'll be able to do it for that? It's amazing when, some of the plants that I see, and I see them all, and again, so big as we're letting them build their own electric generation. This way we have no problem, and otherwise they'd be complaining. There'd be nobody able to, we have an old grid system. And not only that, they're going to sell at a very cheap price the excess electricity that they create back into our grid. So that'll solve some problems for certain states that don't have enough electricity.
With so much happening in the rich north, many here in South Africa seem to have forgotten that we have a focal point of our own, the Madlanga Commission. Some disquiet is emerging there because the behavior of some of the questioners suggests pretty strongly that they've already made up their minds, either pro or anti-General Mkhwanazi. That's not really what the intention of a commission is, which is more like, let's go and find out what's actually happened, what the truth is, not to be taking a view beforehand. Yesterday, my colleague Chris Steyn spoke to Action Society's Juanita about this.
I don't know about you, but one can tell from the way people pose questions how they have preconceived ideas, or some people seem to have made up their minds already without having heard all the evidence.
Yes, definitely. And not just because they are listening to the other group, but I think they are. We know that there are people who support not Julius Mkhwanazi, General Mkhwanazi, who support him from the get-go, and nothing brought against him will make them change their minds. And I think that's a big part of the population. But we have to keep our wits about ourselves, because it can still be that he is not telling the truth, and that is why we want all the evidence, and it should be weighed up against everything, all the testimony, all the witnesses' statements, and so on. But then that brings us to that there is a preconceived attitude amongst many of the people doing the questioning. But I do hope that other people are more balanced and actually look at the facts without having a preconceived notion of where they want it to go.
Like a soapy breakup scene, selling your car can be an emotional experience.
Just how dramatic was the car selling experience?
Not dramatic at all. I did my research, and WeBuyCars was by far the best price.
Very not dramatic. But I like drama.
I was standing there watching my phone, waiting for the money to get in, and there it was.
Yes. Car, driving.
WeBuyCars, the easiest way to sell your car, by far.
I wouldn't mind a little more drama. Anybody bring me some tears?
Back on the investment front, the rand is at 16 rands and 27 cents against the US dollar. This is a wonderful performance by the currency over the past year. It's up by 12% now, and it's hard to believe that back in April last year, we were sitting at 1976. So it costs you a heck of a lot less to import products. Of course, it's you're not getting as much for your exports. But as far as South African assets are concerned in a global context, they have improved by 12% just because of the way the currency has gone. Perhaps the major reason for this is the improvement in the commodities prices. And we saw that the stocks on the JSE have been really running hard over the last few months. Yesterday, however, it was the turn of Afrimat to put on a 4% improvement as far as our portfolio is concerned. Orion Minerals, the copper operation, which is about to go into production, had another good session, up 10% to 33 cents a share. And that's an appropriate intro for Peter Major, who told us to buy or recommended Orion in the first place. And, well, if you bought in at 21 cents, you're looking very happy right now. But he is concerned, not about Orion, but about the mining sector generally, and explains in this clip from our discussion yesterday. We have a weekly interview, which is called Mining Web Weekly. He explains that the mining sector now makes up 38% of the JSE All Share Index, a multi-decade high, but also that it's generating massive tax revenue that is effectively saving the South African economy despite government inefficiencies. Peter also touches on the disconnect between the gold price and gold equities. You can hear the full interview elsewhere, but here's a little highlight.
Where are we? Right now, the mining resource sector in South Africa is 38% of our Aussie 40. Alec, I don't think I've seen it 38% in 25 years. I don't think I've seen it in this millennium. And when I was an analyst and fund manager, late 80s, all through the 90s, when there was a bit of a run, it would get up to 50, but it would fall down as low as 25. So gold and platinum now, they are 32%. They're a third of our index. And we don't even have any gold mines except for a couple, huh? Anglo Gold's got nothing here. Gold Fields has one asset here. They got 20 assets out of here. And yet gold is now a third of our index. So it's dragging the index up. It's generating profits like this government's never seen. It's going to generate taxes like this government's never going to see again. And that's with 4/5 of our gold mines closed down that we had a couple decades ago. 4/5 of them closed down. And yet I think that the earnings and the taxes, they're going to more than double. Hell, the revenue is almost going to double from 2024, 2025. So it's pulling this economy along. As Pete Viljoen was saying, it's nothing to do with the government. In fact, if the economy is doing good and you see that the GNU is frozen, then you can attribute that to the government. You can actually give them credit for doing nothing. Because without a doubt, this economy, the less government, the more this economy flies. Because it's got a lot of good people. It's got great weather, great minerals, great shoreline. So if ever there was a country that would do better with less government, it's this one. But yeah, what does the average guy do? Well, if he's in the Aussie, he's got to be aware that gold and platinum is a third of that Aussie. And so the Aussie will come off when they come off. And the shares are discounting that. These gold shares are not reflecting today's price. I don't know how much less, but they're reflecting a price of maybe a week or two ago. So they're wary. The people buying these gold equities are wary that this price could pull back. And we know equities fall multiples of what the gold price does. Equities go up multiples of what the gold price does. It works both ways. How much money have you got? If you're that Chinese billionaire that says he's now put half his assets in gold, well, maybe he was tapped out in some property that was looking pricey and he's got the Chinese government nationalizing it and he can see properties in for a bad few years in China. Maybe that was an easy decision. And maybe he believes the Chinese government is going to support this kind of gold price. I think it's got 5,000 written on it. I just don't know how long it'll stay there. I think silver is going to hit 100. I don't know how long it's going to stay there. And it might even go more once it gets there.
Well, talking about our portfolio, Teledyne was a star performer. Last night, it jumped 10%. This after it released quarterly results to the Wall Street faithful who were expecting $5.83 a share and got $6.30. They loved it. They pushed up the share price. Net sales for Teledyne were up 7.3%, which also was above estimates, with defense and aerospace segment sales up 40%. Not surprising when you hear Donald Trump talking about things like a golden dome. Here's a brief summary from Teledyne's executive chairman, Dr. Robert Mehrabian, in the call to investors last night.
We concluded 2025 with the largest quarterly orders, sales, and non-GAAP earnings, and as well as operating margin in the company's history. Consequently, I'm optimistic about 2026, both due to the performance of our businesses in 2025, as well as the new leadership in place with George Bobb as CEO and multiple senior executives with added responsibilities in our business segments. Getting back to 2025, fourth quarter sales increased 7.3% from last year, while non-GAAP earnings increased 14.1%. For the full year, sales increased 7.9% and non-GAAP earnings increased 11.5%. Throughout Teledyne, our defense businesses remained healthy, and our short-cycle commercial businesses continued to recover, with most product families increasing either sequentially or year over year.
And now you have the edge. For the full interviews and details behind these stories, head over to biznews.com. I'm Alec Hogg. Thanks for starting your morning with us. Now go and seize the day.